No surrender. More like a lot of surrender. By the writers. Am I right, people? Am I right? I've been dragging my feet on making this video. 1, because I'm pretty busy with real-life stuff right now. 2, because I just was not excited to talk about this particular show. Not that it was a terrible impact. There were some good things about it. The wrestling was, for the most part, solid to very good. But despite what certain people out there like to think sometimes, just good wrestling does not automatically make a compelling show, especially not when creative shits the bed. So even though there was some very enjoyable wrestling on this show, it wasn't enough to stop the more frustrating things about the writing and the booking this week from grating on me more and more. First, the positives. Eli Drake and Drew Galloway. Drake just turned heel, he needs to look like an effective heel, so he won the match. And it was that simple. Drake is the newer guy the Star fans are less familiar with, he needed to be elevated, and Drew was in a position to give him a bit of a rub. And yeah, Drew still has a lot of work to do to make the fans forget about how WWE made him look for years, but TNA have positioned him as one of their bigger stars, so beating him does something for Eli Drake. Austin Aries and Rockstar Spud, career versus nickname. It doesn't change my criticism about the half-assed way it was set up last week, but this segment did turn out really well. The psychology was good here, there was a lot on the line, so they had to do stuff they wouldn't normally do, kick out of stuff they wouldn't normally kick out of, and so on. And then the finish with the super underdog off the top turnbuckle, that was great! They had a very good match, and the guy who's staying beat the guy who's leaving in a way that elevated him and made him look good. Again, it's that simple. Very simple. And yet TNA have somehow found a way to completely fuck this up on more than one occasion. Like when the writers had Sting and AJ make world champion Magnus look like shit right before they left. Those wins really hurt Magnus, but this win did a lot to help Rockstar Spud.
Rockstar Spud is in the building!
The whole story is that Spud is a guy who always came up short against the big stars, EC3, Kurt Angle, but finally rose to the challenge and got over on one of them. It sucks that we're losing Aries, but kudos to the greatest man that ever lived for doing the classy thing, the right thing for business, and putting somebody over on his way out. Then there was EC3 and Matt Hardy in Full Metal Mayhem for the world title. Now, despite the Full Metal Mayhem thing becoming pretty overdone, despite Matt not really being a viable world title contender, they overcame a lot of the things working against them here, and they had a really good match. And again, the guy who needed to win did win, and he did it the right way. Just when I was a little nervous that they might be taking EC3's title reign in a direction similar to the one Magnus's took, where he can't win matches by himself and loses tons of credibility and so on, EC3 wins clean with no bullshit. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was the good stuff. That was stuff about this Impact that I enjoyed. But then other things happened. Things that made me wonder if the writers were either asleep at the wheel or actively trying to drive off the road. I thought the whole storyline with Anderson and Bram was that Anderson needed to go to a dark, violent place to kind of fight Bram in his own element. And I assumed that's where we'd be heading with this after Bram gave Anderson that beating the last time they fought. Instead, they have a regular match. They don't really do anything they wouldn't do in a regular match, and Anderson wins. If they weren't going to go to any extremes just yet, then why did Anderson go over in this match? It's like they just forgot about the story here. Then Bram attacks Anderson after the match, although it was pretty tame. He hit Anderson with a microphone one time, and that's supposed to escalate this? How? I thought we already covered that part.
This is unbelievable. This doesn't make any sense.
Speaking of forgetting to tell a story, Koya turning on James Storm. Well, this sure came right the fuck out of nowhere. Not Storm being upset with Koya necessarily, but the part where Koya is so fed up and so defiant of Storm that he finally snaps. There was exactly zero indication that this was building up. Storm had been kind of setting the table for it a little bit, although it was so sparse and inconsistent that I'm having trouble recalling when the last time they touched on it was. But we never got even the slightest hint that Koya was unhappy in the Revolution, was working up the guts to turn on them. We never got any of his reactions to being treated poorly by Storm. He was a directionless revolution drone one second and dropping the cowboy screaming defiantly the next. All the most important buildup required to make this turn mean something was completely ignored. This was downright sloppy. You can't do it just like that and expect people to care. Where was the attention to detail in all this? Oh, that's right, there wasn't any.
This whole show is ridiculous!
Gail Kim versus the Dollhouse could have been a good match. It could have been a bad match. I really didn't care. The quality of the match, one way or the other, was irrelevant after the way it finished. Would it really have killed Gail to put over Taryn, or Jade, or Marty? You really had to have her beat all 3 Dollhouse members? Who, may I remind you, are the only heels who mean a fucking thing in the knockout division right now, or at least that's how it used to be. You couldn't just let them beat her 3-on-1, or gang up on her and cause a DQ, or something? Would Gail lose anything in that situation? No. Would the Dollhouse gain something? Yes. Instead, it's like they spent several months building this faction of new girls up, just so Gail would have something to tear down, which benefits absolutely no one. I'm gonna say this again, TNA. Gail Kim is great. But newsflash, numbnuts! She's closer to 40 than 30, it's fucking 2015, and you need to start thinking about the future! Because Gail is going to be gone someday, and continuing to push her like she's knockout Jesus is nothing but counterproductive! And if that's all this story is going to amount to, Gail walking all over the future of the division just so she can be put over again, then count me out. Because that sucks.
Urge to kill rising.
So, after they made a huge deal out of bringing back Bully Ray and making him the authority figure, TNA writes him off TV almost immediately. For God's sake, TNA, if you're not sure you can hold on to these people for more than a few weeks, then don't put them in major storylines!
You people are fools!
And so, not 5 minutes later, Jeff Jarrett waltzes into Dixie's office and he's like, "Dixie, I saw what happened. I can help. Put me in charge of the show." And she does it! Alright, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Double J previously fired from this company like twice for doing heelish, untrustworthy things? Work, shoot, whatever, it still happened. And Dixie doesn't even consider this for 1 second? I would think that after Hogan and Bischoff and the Immortal fiasco, that Dixie would be just a little bit more careful about who she puts in charge of her fucking show. But apparently, rational thought is some kind of foreign concept to the Dixie Carter babyface character for some reason. So you don't need a crystal ball to know what's coming up next. You don't need to have read the taping results. They might as well have spelled it out in giant neon flashing lights. They couldn't have telegraphed it any more with an actual telegraph, and Dixie still fell for it. Again.
Congratulations, you just renewed your idiot license!
Why do they do this with her? Why do they constantly make the babyface Dixie look so gullible and weak? Why would you want to portray the president of the company like that? And why does she always agree to it? I don't know. But I don't like it. And I don't like the idea of another invasion angle either. Haven't you done enough of these by now? I know it's one of the writer's favorite go-to angles, but if these guys can't come up with anything new and just want to regurgitate the same thing we've seen over and over from them, then maybe it's time to get some new writers.
Oh, my brother! Testify!
There were some good things on this Impact, but the bad things ended up outnumbering them. At times, the storytelling is good. At other times, it's repetitive, unfocused, and unoriginal. Creative needs an overhaul, because someone in the writer's room is just not getting the job done. Over. Out.